Welcome to the Paideia Way, conversations on whole person education. I'm Dr. Brian Winsor. I'm the executive director and the founder of Paideia Academies in South Phoenix, Arizona. And I have with me, as always, I'm joined by Mrs. Victoria Jones, who is our executive director of education operations on site. I'm glad you're with us. Today, we're going to explore, in my mind, probably one of the most foundational elements that we could ever talk about. It's principles of effectiveness and the inside out approach. It's how family values shape habits and culture at home. And again, I'm so glad you're here with us. Most family advice start with strategies. And in my history, I've given plenty of parent webinars and parent classes. And I know that Mrs. Jones has as well. And normally we talk about routines and consequences and screen times and chore charts. And as a young dad and mom, we had all kinds of charts all over the house to help get our kids and our family in order. Now, these tools are great and they're helpful, but families often tell us that we tried that and it worked for maybe a week or two, and then everything fell apart. Well, here's why. Strategies don't hold when they aren't connected to values. If the why isn't clear, the what won't last. If the why are we doing this again isn't clear, the what are we supposed to do, it falls apart. It will not last, not sustainable. So today, we're going to start where lasting growth and sustainability starts, inside, with principles. And again, I don't know that I could ever emphasize this enough. Principle-centered families, principle-centered living. For example, bedtime routine. I'm a grandpa helping with raising some grandkids right now, and bedtime routine and nap time routines get tough. So I have to tell my family that it's not about sleeping. Bedtime routine isn't about sleeping. Underneath sleeping is a value, health, peace, learning, relationship building, connection. Now, I've known Mrs. Jones for a lot of years, and she's one, I've heard her probably say this 1,000 times, if not a million. Inside out learning, inside out approach. Mrs. Jones, define that. Tell us, what do you mean every time you said inside out?
Yeah, inside out. It's so important. And it means that we are starting with our identity, our character, our principles. These are the things that we can't see, the things inside of us. We start building those things first: identity, character, principles. Build those things first, and then we build behavior. So in action, this is the difference between saying, stop doing that to a child versus saying, in our family, we're the kind of people who do this, or we're the kind of people who believe this, we're the kind of people who associate with this. So we're building who we are, what's our character, what are our principles, instead of just calling out behaviors that we don't want to see. See, inside out isn't even about being perfect. It's just about being aligned. So let's start with some simple definitions around this. And we want to start with that first word, principle. Yeah. A principle, what is that? Well, a principle is really a steady guide. It's something that's true all the time. It's true when we're tired. It's true when we're stressed. It's true when things are going wrong, when there's pressures. Whatever's happening around us, these principles are steady guides that guide us in our behaviors and our actions. A habit is a repeated practice. It's something that you do. And that repeated practice that turns that principle into a positive habit energy that governs our daily life. So we build our principles, and then it shows up in our habits. A repeated practice can also turn into negative habit energy, though, that controls our actions even when we don't realize it. That's why we want to build positive habits that build on our principles and our values.
Hmm.
So let's think about how this works in terms of whole person education. So whole person education includes academics, right? We are always want to make sure that we have good, high, strong academics. But whole person education also incorporates relationships, character, health, creativity. What's my purpose in life? Whole person education answers those questions too. And schools, this is an area that schools can't do this alone. Schools can support growth in those areas. And I think that's something that Paideia is really good at, supporting growth in whole person education. But families shape these outcomes at home. And families shape this through thousands of small moments throughout the day. How we speak to each other, how we repair relationships in our home, how we celebrate ourselves, how we celebrate each other, even how we rest at home. What does that look like in our house? And how we handle stress in our family. So the question that we want to ask today is this: what kind of culture are we building at home? So that brings us to the difference between principles and preferences.
I like to think about it this way: principles versus preference. Preferences is just how I prefer to do things. And having been married for nearly 40 years, I have preferences and my sweet wife have preferences. And it doesn't matter. Preference is just how I like to do stuff.
Yeah.
Principles and preferences can change over time. Principle, though, this matters even when it's inconvenient, as Mrs. Jones said. A principle matters when I'm hungry, when I'm stressed, when it matters the most in those moments of choice. That's when principles matter, because preferences change. The principles hold steady. It's the anchor. It's the rock that I hold on to when life gets really stressful. Principles are so important because they reduce conflict, because they give you a shared reference point. Example, I would say, I want a quiet home. I want a quiet house. The principle, that's a preference. The principle becomes, in our home, we treat people with respect. We treat our environment with respect. A preference is, I want my kids to get a straight A's. I've heard that I don't know how many times. A parent coming in and say, why are my kids not getting straight A's? Well, I say, Mama, that's a good preference you have there. But the principle underlying the preference is, we value learning. We value effort. We value integrity. My mama taught us we value a work ethic, and that went into our education. Let's do a quick check-in together. In the chat, we want you to type one word that you hope describes your family culture. It might be peaceful, strong, joyful, respectful, curious, maybe safe. What represents your family culture? Now, if you're listening to the podcast, this is a good time to maybe pause and think, what one word do we hope describes our family culture? And take a moment. Now, think of a time that your family was at its best. So we hope this describes our family. Now, think of a time when your family was at its best, even if it was a brief moment. What value was present in that moment? Respect, patience, teamwork, kindness, humor. Now, let's move from personal values to shared family principles. Shared principles isn't something one person announces. I've been a daddy for a long time, and I've tried that. And to announce to my family, hey, these are the principles we're going to live by. That doesn't go over well. I've been a principal and leaders of schools for my entire adult life. And if I went into the school and said, these are our principles, these are the values we're going to live by, it doesn't work that way. It's something that we name together. because we need full alignment. It's not voting, it's listening with empathic, understanding ears. So the win is that we listen carefully and we watch carefully to see what is our family, what is this institution of a school or a corporation or a team or a family, the fundamental unit. What matters most to our family as a whole? Once the values are identified and named, then it makes family decisions easier. Schedules, technology, routines, consequences, all of that. It makes it easier because then we can identify and name the value. Mm-hmm. My little grandson loves to punch. He's 4, and he's like a wild lion cub. And so even this morning when I went in, he greeted me with a punch. And think about how tall that little guy is. And so I just knelt down. It's like, well, hey, we don't punch people. No, I just knelt down and says, hey, Jake, remember, we're kind to each other in our family. And I don't really like that. Nobody likes that. We're kind in our family. So in our family, respect means this. In our family, responsibility looks like this. In our family, when we mess up a room or we mess up a thing, hey, we repair that thing. When we mess up a relationship, we go and we repair the relationships because we value what? My mother was value driven and she didn't even know it. She would have this conversation frequently. In our family, she would often say, when one is working, we're all working because we are a family. And she was teaching us the idea and the fundamental principle of cooperation and collaboration in our work. So that brings us to one of my favorite parts of what we're doing, and that is a simple practice that you can operate in and have in your family.
Yeah, this is my favorite part too. I love this because this is an opportunity to put this into practice. So today, this week's practice is called the values poster. So here's the simple explanation of a values poster. Everyone in your family, all of our individuals will go around the outside, individual values, everyone's individual values go around the outside of the poster, and then shared values go in the center. Now remember, this poster, this is not decoration. It's not just for decoration. This should become a reference point. It should be somewhere that everybody will be able to look at it and remind ourselves, these are my values, which I can find on the outside of the poster. And these are our shared values of our family, which we can find in the center of the poster. When you're doing this, remember, when conflict happens, the idea is that you can point to this poster and you can ask, which value are we trying to protect here in this conflict or in this situation, in this scenario? And we should be able to call out that value based on our values poster. When you're doing this, keep it short. 15 minutes tops, all right? Drawings count for everyone. It should be 1 page, and then you're done. All right? So let's go through some troubleshooting items, right? So as you're doing this activity with your family, what happens if values collide? And we're in conflict between what's more important, freedom, safety. Those kinds of conversations are normal. And just have the conversation, go down that road with your family. Because the goal isn't about eliminating tension in doing this. It's naming it so that you can lead with clarity. So embrace it and just go down that path with your family as you're developing your list of values.
So I like that. So in this poster, maybe a poster board, right?
Yeah.
And so is this like 3x5 cards that I can post on there first, and then each child we probably have to have a lesson what values mean maybe in that discussion before. Like, I think one of my granddaughter might value watching Bluey, or watching TV or having ice cream for dessert, like every dinner, So how would we do that? I mean, I'm curious. This family
Well,
discussion about what values are versus preferences, maybe.
yes, definitely a family discussion before you jump into the poster. Give some examples of values, some examples of the values you've lived by your whole life, values that you were taught by your family. Maybe there are some values that have been passed down through generations in your family. And you can talk about that. And you can say, remember grandma so and so, or remember aunt so and so. And you can talk about people in your family who have exemplified some of these values. And so start there by doing a lesson, a little family debrief on what do we mean when we say values. What do we mean for the sake of this activity when we say values? It's okay for your child to value bluey, that's okay. But for the sake of coming together as a family and operating as a family in our home, what are we going to draw on as our common family values?
I like the why discussion as well. It's like, hey, why do we value work, or why do we value kindness? Why do we value this? And making those little statements. It might not be one meeting. It might
Yeah.
be a family meeting or family circle, and then we return to it the next week and we think about it over time because it's such an important part of life. I'm going to
Yeah,
diverge a little bit for a minute. And we
sure.
at the school level, we see the results of family of principle driven families, value driven families,
Yeah,
value driven schools versus purely academic driven schools. You know what I mean?
absolutely. Yes.
Because Mrs. Jones and I and another executive at Paideia Academies, we sit on disciplinary hearings, and we're hearing officers. So most of the times I know the children in the family because, well, yeah, I've been there for a long time.
Yeah.
But it's interesting to me how when a child comes in for this disciplinary hearing, uh, they they're they're smart kids, they're academically capable, but when it comes to the values and holding on to values to keep them safe in their decision making when emotions are high or peer pressure is pressing them, or our world's dangerous right now. So if in your family you could identify these values, and I love what Mrs. Jones has given us, this idea of a poster that says, hey, you're not in trouble with me. You're not getting a consequence. We're just going to look at this poster and say, we value honesty. And it feels like to me right now, we're not honest. So
Hmm.
let's go back to our values, our principles. We value health, and marijuana and vape pens, and this isn't health that we valued in our family. We value safety, and that's not safe. So I think if we continue to go back to the values frequently, not just make it a poster, because the poster is important, but after a while that becomes wallpaper almost.
Yeah.
you know
Yeah.
Stretch on that for a minute, Mrs. Jones, from your perspective of what we experience at the school, with our partnership with families.
Well, that goes back to the idea about the inside out. When we see
Mm,
families really working on these values and building principles, building values, building morals internally, that's going to show in your behavior. Because what happens when you're
mm,
faced with an opportunity to make a bad choice, make a wrong choice, what comes to mind? The thing that should come to mind is your values, your principles,
mm,
those things that are guiding you. And that will help your child make a decision that's good for them and that exemplifies your values rather than going down a different kind of path. And the thing is, everyone makes mistakes.
yeah.
No one is perfect, and we're gonna make mistakes. We're gonna mess up as parents. We're gonna make mistakes, and
Mm.
we'll have to take ourselves to the poster
I
right? And
love
say,
that. Take ourselves.
we
We need a
will.
poster talk right now, Mom.
We need to do a poster talk. And so, as long as we're modeling that for our children at home, here's what happens when we make a mistake. Here's what happens when we're faced with a conflict. Something is pushing against our values and we have to choose. How do we know what to choose? What's going to guide us? And that's what we want this poster, what we hope this poster will represent for you, for your family. It will give you a guiding place.
Uh, my sweet mother, we had a family meeting nearly every week. And in the family meeting, um, we discussed values. It was very scripture based. It was very religion based, which I'm very thankful for because I think it taught me the foundation of principle centered living. But it was a weekly conversation, and my mom was candid enough that she'd call stuff out, and then during the week, she didn't know she was doing it, but her little sayings and her little quips of, I'm not raising boys, I'm raising men. We value this, and we had on our door there was a metal plaque, and it said "Return with honor." So when we went out that door, we know what honor means to our family, and we'd hit that little plaque, and it would remind us to return with honor.
Wow.
This is the root system. This is if your roots are shallow, any storm that comes is going to blow you over. So that the principle-centered living gives us deep, strong roots that can hold when emotions surge, or the winds of temptation or the peer pressures blow against us. This is the identity we have as a family, as an individual first, and as a family, and the principles that support that. I'm looking forward
Dr.
to. Go
Winsor,
ahead.
I was just thinking when you shared that story, for me, this happened around our dinner table,
Oh,
every night. We would always have dinner together as a family, and this is where our family principles were determined, where we discussed those things and where it was modeled by my parents. And so I encourage you as a family to identify that place. What's that going to look like for you? Is it the dinner table? Is it on the way to school in the car? Is it a bedtime routine? Spending time together every evening before bed. Whatever it is, these are the times when, for your family, whatever your family looks like, to come together and identify these things.
yeah. I'm thinking about those single moms and single grandmas raising kids, and
Yeah.
just have to find that time, make it a priority. Yeah, I know your mom and dad, and I can see that, and I see the results, the strong family. Next week, we're going to build on this, and we're going to talk about your family North Star. What is your North Star that guides your family, that is unchanging, a shared vision that helps decision making and governs your home, especially, like I said, when emotions run hot, desires are different, and the moment is urgent. What guides you? Because once you know what you want to become, priorities become much, much clearer. Again, as we sign off and as we end today's conversation, we want you to remember and be tender and gentle with yourself. You're a mom, you're a dad, a grandma, grandpa, aunt. You are also a whole person. Be gentle, be kind with yourself, your body, your mind, your heart, and your spirit. Be well. And until next time, this is the Paideia Way.